Hi there, I'm Todd Williams, architect in New York City, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guyout. It's Monday, August 4th, and we've got a great lineup of guests. Prolific architecture author Sam Lubell, Colorado architects John Rowland and Sarah Broughton, and our musical guest today is Taurey Butler. And now, your host, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Hey, thanks, Tom. A lot of U.S. Modernist radio listeners have yet to discover the U.S. Modernist Library, the world's largest open digital repository for architecture magazines spanning back over a century. We've got 5 million pages of publications, and today I'm happy to share that we're expanding beyond magazines. The digital landscape is always changing, and valuable architectural insights often just vanish. Things just disappear. We're talking about the architectural podcast that stopped producing new shows and preservation websites that have vanished. We want to revive these forgotten treasures. Is there a discontinued podcast that you miss? How about an abandoned architecture website, one of those early ones from the 1990s or the 2000s that used to be your go-to? Email information to me, george@usmodernist.org, and meanwhile, check out the podcast and websites we've already gotten at usmodernist.org/library. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Returning guest Sam Lubell is a writer, critic, design sleuth, and a guy who makes you care deeply about buildings, built and never built. A graduate of Brown University.
Go Bears!
Sam has written over a dozen architecture books, including American Icons Volume 2, The Architecture of the United States, Elegance and Progress, just published in April of this year. In addition to being an editor-at-large for Metropolis magazine, he's contributed to The New York Times, Dwell, Wired, and he was West Coast editor of the Architects newspaper. Sam Lubell's Never Built series, created with Greg Golden, is some of the most imaginative architectural storytelling in recent years. Here's George's latest conversation with Sam Lubell.
Hi, Sam. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much, George. Great to be on with you as always.
So you are just putting these books out. I mean, between you and Alan Hess and Dominic Bradbury, you guys are really the Jedi of architectural books. I mean, if you read the books by those three authors, you've got it. You have covered the panorama of great modernism. Thank you.
If you're going to mention me in the same breath with those authors, I'm honored, and I don't pretend to be at their level, but at least I'm creating a lot, so that's good, and I appreciate it.
Well, you are definitely among the Jedi there, Sam.
Jedi's good.
This is Volume 2. Volume 1 came out last year. So is this one of those where, like, you know, The Godfather Part 2, people are going to go, I think Part 2 was better than Part 1. What do you think?
Well, hopefully it's like a Godfather level sequel. It's not like, maybe Back to the Future 2 wasn't as good. But yeah, you never know. But it's exciting to kind of expand on what we were doing. And for me, as I like to say, it's an excuse to learn things that I always want to learn about architecture and modernism. And in this case, the U.S., which I think is a good topic. I think so much of architecture, in the history of architecture, we're talking about what's going on in Europe and its influence on the U.S. And it does demand kind of a look at holistically what's happened here in the U.S. In architecture. We're still struggling to define our identity in architecture, so it's worth it to really take a closer look.
So this book is on American icons, and you've got some great ones in here. You've got certainly all the major ones that I've ever run across, like the Stahl House in Los Angeles, probably one of the most famous houses the Lovell Beach House and the Lovell Health Houses in California. Very, very famous. And of course, you've got some commercial buildings here too. You've got the Salk Institute in La Jolla. You've got the Exeter Academy in Exeter, New Hampshire. The St. Louis Gateway Arch. I mean, these are just fantastic. And you've got amazing photography in here. Who are some of the photographers that you've worked with?
Lucky that this field has a lot of great photographers and people capturing these homes and these buildings. And I have to say, often they're the stars of the show and what we do. And one person in particular that I work with quite a bit is Darren Bradley, who I worked with on 2 guides to architectural travel, both West Coast and East Coast. And he's amazing. He just kind of takes you into these places and kind of does a lot of the work that I'm doing. And we're kind of working together to kind of tell the story. And another person is Andrew Peelage, who's a lot of the stuff from Frank Lloyd Wright he's captured. And he's another one of those photographers who really has the knack for not just documenting something, but really pulling you into it and almost making you feel like you're there. And that's part of my goal, is to make you feel like you're there and to give you a history, but also tell you some stories behind it. And also just give people who aren't as familiar with this kind of architecture. There are some houses that are surprises, but if you're going to do a book called American Icons, it'll be less about the surprises and more kind of capture stuff that we know and what should be the most important in people's eyes. What are the stepping stones? And then you can really start from there and jump off and get into some of the B-sides and get into some of the stuff that really tells the full story, which is something I love doing as well.
Well, let's start with a very small but also very well-known building. Not a lot of people get to see it, though, and that's the MIT Chapel in Boston. Tell me about that.
Oh, yeah. That's an amazing one. That's Eero Saarinen, who was a master and also somebody that he switched his designs every time. It's not like a firm like maybe an SOM where you sort of knew where you were getting. He worked for a lot of corporate clients, but every time he did something, it was different and kind of appropriate to the site. And MIT was all about that, all about creating a space on campus that really needed a sense of respite somewhere, very technical place. He did other projects as well on the campus, including the Kresge Auditorium right next door. But this one is sort of very internal and makes you kind of feel like you've escaped. You walk over sort of a bridge across the reflecting pool and into this space that really transports you. It's so dark, but there's kind of sense of nature around you. And it really, what I love about it, and what's something that I think Saarinen did incredibly well, is he collaborated with artists to make a space feel like an artwork. He really does it well when he's working with Bertoia and the kind of floating sculpture that comes down from the ceiling. It feels sort of like cascading water or cascading light coming down. And you just get a sense of heaviness and then ethereality, which I think makes a holy space like a chapel really, really work and really transport you. Any space that can transport you like that, I'm a fan of. So yeah, it's a wonderful one.
Another Saarinen project that you covered in the book is Bell Labs, which is getting its spotlight right now in a TV series.
Yes, a show that I like quite a bit. It's fun because it's sort of like when you saw the band before they started.
Yeah.
Because I knew that building well before it was in the show. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I've been there. I know that building. But yeah, it's an amazing building. Well, it's not actually a building. It's a collection of buildings that are joined by these amazing glass atria. And one of the first true kind of corporate building icons that was done outside of a big city, kind of on a campus, suburban campus, Holmdel, New Jersey, not a place that was known as a corporate center before this. And some of the most famous inventions in the world came out of there. A number of Nobel Prize winners worked there. Actually, my uncle, he did work there for some time. We talked about it as well. In Severance, the show that you were mentioning, not the most flattering portrayal, but it's actually one of the most luminous, beautiful spaces for work I've ever been to. Just the way when you're inside, you feel like you're outside, you feel like it's soaring. Kind of the opposite of the way it's portrayed in Severance, where you feel like you're trapped.
Right.
So yeah, it's worth going to see that. But I think, it's also just an amazing corporate campus, the way that it reflects the clouds with that mirrored glass. That was a very new thing when Saarinen designed it. Sasaki did the landscape, and it's got these ponds, and it really kind of stretches out into the landscape. A lot of the landscapes now, housing tracts, a lot of the land was bought by a developer. But unfortunately, the building was saved, and it's still used as it's called Bell Works, and it's used by a lot of startups, and it's got that kind of energy still. So yeah, it's another amazing Saarinen and completely different from the chapel and from a lot of his other buildings as well.
One of my very favorite buildings in the world is the United Nations headquarters in New York. Many times I've walked into the General Assembly Hall. You just feel this kind of magnificence and possibility, like, hey, maybe we could all get along at some point.
Yeah.
Tell me about that building.
Yeah, it definitely aspires to that. And it's sort of the definition of the international style, as it was called, because it's literally designed to represent international peace. They had a group of international architects kind of gathered together somehow to work on it, and all the egos competing. And they had this guy, Wallace Harrison, sort of wrangling them all together. You had like Niemeyer and Corbusier and all these major powers in architecture from around the world. So it's kind of like an architectural version of the UN, everybody competing and trying to find common interest. And I think it really does do that. I've been there a number of times, and when you're inside and all the kind of beautiful Danish modern automatically makes you feel more at ease, just the way it's built.
Yes.
It's sort of modernism that's human and warm. And so in that way, it sort of brings people together. But then there's these soaring spaces, like you mentioned, the Secretariat, that kind of make you feel, the way Corbusier designed it, sort of uplift you and make you feel like it is possible to solve some of the world's problems. And that's what I think, the best architecture does, is it lifts your spirit and drives you to make the world better. Sort of like the MIT chapel does that in a very, very different way.
Yes.
But that's what, kind of great architecture does. And, it was built in a very different vernacular from other attempts to bring together the world. Like there were all these efforts to build the Peace Palace in Belgium and other efforts to kind of bring the world together after, World War I, World War II. And this was the first one that was done in a very modernist style, international style, glass and steel. So it's sort of the modern version of something that had been attempted for years. And, they're still trying. They're being sidestepped a little bit these days, but they're still trying and in a lot of ways being effective. But it's not easy at all.
One of the houses that I don't think a lot of people know about, but is really spectacular, is the Weston Havens House in Berkeley by Harwell Hamilton Harris. What's all that about?
Oh yeah, he's another architect that doesn't always get the due that he deserves, but he was an incredible early modern designer, and he kind of worked for Neutscher for a while, and he was able to kind of bring Deutsch's ability to really infuse a space with its surroundings and with nature. But he's also, in this house at Weston Havens, which is in the hills of Berkeley, really capturing the kind of rustic modern aesthetic of Berkeley that kind of comes out of the school in a lot of ways, and also in the pastoral setting there. When you look at it, the kind of it's based on this amazing, at the time, technology of steel triangular trusses that kind of hold it together and make it feel much lighter and open it up to huge windows. And those trusses are echoed in the form, which kind of makes for this form that looks like it's floating and it's going to fly off into space. And another thing is inside, not just is it open to the elements, but so much attention to detail everywhere. He was also a craftsman, Harwell Hamilton Harris, and the bookshelves are all designed of a piece. They actually have the same kind of uplift as the outside of the house, kind of these uplifted wings, and he's got this central courtyard that actually was used for badminton, which is kind of amazing. Got a map of the world that was done by an artist in one of the rooms. Wherever you go, there's attention to detail, and that's something I love. We have a lot of houses in this book, even though this is icons, that you could consider not iconic to a lot of people, even though they were so important. And I can talk about some of those as well.
Well, we have in our archives home movies that Harris filmed of the Weston Havens House that you can look at. Really cool old films.
Oh, wow. I got to check that out.
Sam, are there some houses that people don't generally know about in the book?
Yeah, even though this is a book that's about, as we say, icons, revered icons of architecture, there are a few that we snuck in that are a little less well known that I think are quite important. One of them is a house by a designer named Russell Wright, who a lot of people don't know that name now, but in the mid-century, he was kind of a rock star. He was known at the time for his American Modern line of ceramic dinnerware that was, I think still is the most popular line of mid-century dinnerware ever made. He also did a book, A Guide to Easier Living, which became sort of the Bible of people that wanted to live like the new breezy mid-century modern lifestyle. But he's the second Wright to build an amazing house over water that's sort of like another version of Falling Water. It's called Manitoga, also called Dragon Rock. And it was a house in upstate New York that he and his wife built, did it with an architect, David Levitt. And it's organic modernism to a T. I mean, he designed everything. He designed the landscape around it. out of an old quarry. He created his own pond, and every view is designed as you kind of make this walk up to the house is designed so that you get a better look at the house and kind of feel this sense of unity. And then inside, the centerpiece of the house is a giant cedar tree trunk, just literally the trunk of the house, not even cut up at all. And there's wooden beams, stone floors, there's boulders inside, and all the windows are designed so you get to see the landscape outside. So it's kind of this amazing fusion of like what modern can do in the landscape. And he's not as well known. Another one is the Brubeck House, another architect that I love, Beverly David Thorne. He did a case study house up in San Rafael.
For
he was known
the
for,
jazz artist, Dave Brubeck.
Yeah. And the Brubeck House is not a case study house, but the 26 was sort of the epitome of hovering steel over a cliff. Kind of like, you think of the Stahl House. It's sort of the Stahl House of Northern California. But yes, the house that we have in here is the Brubeck House. And there are actually two Brubeck houses. So the first one was in Oakland. Beverly David Thorne was all about using cantilevers and steel to sort of maximize a building. And this house in Oakland floats over the Oakland Hills, so you get views of the bay from there, sort of on a wooded site. It's literally hovering over the site. And then the second house that he did was in Wilton, Connecticut. And instead of hovering, this one is built into the surroundings. And it's very Japanese influence. Brubeck, who loved architecture, also loved Japan. He did a whole album on Japan. It's called Jazz Impressions of Japan after he did a trip there. And so you got Japanese wood paneling, you got a moon gate entry, you have shoji screens, and this amazing stone fireplace and a stone centerpiece in the middle. So it sort of fuses the sort of modern with the natural, kind of like I was saying with Manitoga. So Thorne really had a really diverse toolbox that he was working with. There are some great surprises like that. And that's why people like Alan and I, we love to crank out the books, because the more you learn about this, the more you realize you just don't even know a third of it, a fifth of it, a tenth of it. There's architects I'm learning every day from the mid-century, from now. There's approaches I'm learning, people that are doing things that I couldn't have dreamed of, that just didn't get the recognition that you think they should. So as much as we know about the icons, it's literally, you're just scraping the surface of what there is. So I could keep doing this forever.
Last house I want to ask you about doesn't exist anymore, but I have found it fascinating. And of course, the photo of it has been iconic itself. And that is the Monsanto House of the Future that got developed years ago and is no longer with us. What's all that about?
Well, that was kind of trend, and it's still going. It's sort of this dream of creating a mass-produced, factory-built house. And there were companies that were trying to do that, all through the mid-century, in a time when we were building a ton, and we had factories all over. We're still an industrial economy. A lot of our manufacturing hadn't moved offshore, and so companies like U.S. Steel were trying to build houses, Westinghouse was trying to build houses, Alcoa was trying to build houses, and also Monsanto, a company that was kind of a multinational conglomerate, and they were trying to build these plastic houses. So, U.S. Steel, obviously steel, Alcoa was aluminum, and these were houses that were going to be largely plastic. And there's actually a version of it that was installed in Disneyland for a while, and they were trying to get the ball rolling, and it never did. And a lot of these never did. For some reason, this kind of prefab dream
has never quite taken off. Yeah.
No, and we're still trying. It's still happening now. And here in LA after the fires, so there's a ton of prefab companies trying to do the same, and we'll see. I think part of it is getting people to buy in. I think some people still think that prefab means cheaper. They think of trailers, or they think, they just can't get over the stigma of it, even though that's absolutely not the case. And there's also the idea that our system is still built for stick-built homes, whether it comes to the way they're built, whether it comes to the way they're approved and the codes work. It's just all geared towards one type of building. So we need to change that. And, with our housing crisis now, it makes sense if we're going to build faster. It needs to be faster. It needs to be less material waste. It all makes sense, but a lot has to change. And we're not a society that likes change in a lot of ways. So it's been the dream forever. And so far hasn't really taken off.
Is there going to be an American Icons Volume 3, Sam, a Return of the Jedi version of this trilogy?
That's a good question. You have to ask Gestalten, who's the publisher. There very well could be, but I don't know yet. But yeah, they wanted it to be one book, and then they got excited. There's so much to see that they didn't know about. Even these are icons that we kind of know about, but they're in Berlin, and they were like, oh my God, like, wow, there's so much. We got to do another book. And I think that shows you that we can be in a bubble. A lot of these are icons in America, in a small circle of Americans who follow this. But most people don't know even the ones that we see as iconic. They maybe know like 3 or 4. And the more you get these good designs out there and these kind of, spectacular models out there, the more people will understand the value of good design. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about making better lifestyles. It's about building more efficiently. It's about building a world that actually works in a lot of ways, that works for everybody in a lot of ways. So I think it's great to see this being embraced by publishers elsewhere that really want to spread the world internationally as well. So, and in ways, give us a better name. Maybe we're kind of being ridiculed in international circles in some ways. This is a good thing. So we'll call it soft power diplomacy with architecture. But yeah, it's a thrill to see that response. And the first edition has been very popular, luckily. So they are interested in more. So it's good to see that that's going.
The book is American Icons, Volume 2, The Architecture of the United States, Elegance and Progress. Sam, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks so much.
Thanks, George. Always enjoy being on with you.
Sarah Broughton and John Rowland founded their architecture firm in 2003. It's now 50 people strong with offices in Aspen and Denver. Specializing in homes, hospitality, and cultural institutions, R&B combines architecture, interior design, and landscape. They've worked on more than 50 projects in downtown Aspen, including 20 alone for Aspen Skiing Company. They got a little famous for ski legend Stein Erikson's Starwood House and the W Aspen Hotel and Ajax Tavern. John Rowland graduated in architecture at the University of Colorado Boulder.
Go Buffaloes!
Sarah Broughton also graduated in architecture from Boulder and is former president of the AIA Colorado chapter. Their new book, Designing Aspen, showcases 10 stunning residences in the Rocky Mountains, capturing Aspen's unique charm. Welcome to the show, Sarah and John.
Thank you for having us.
So, John, my first question is for you. In college, there was this woman in class who asked so many questions. Who was that?
The one and only Sarah Broughton.
Yeah? What was her deal?
She is curious and interested to beyond. She wants to know and needs to know everything and has a cabinet of curiosity in her brain. So she continues asking questions. She's a journalist at heart.
A cabinet of curiosity.
Yeah.
What's in there?
Yeah, what's in that cabinet of curiosities?
Well, you'll have to ask her.
Sarah, what's in that cabinet of curiosities?
Wow, that is amazing. I think to be an architect and a designer, and I would say John has a similar cabinet of curiosity, which is why we're together. You look at the world, you're in awe of the vastness of the world, and there's so much to learn and so much to see, and you're a consummate student of life. And so that, I know, feeds me and really keeps me going. And people often ask, what's your favorite project you've ever done? And it's always the next project because you're constantly building and you're growing and you're evolving. So it's a really amazing field to be in that feeds that curiosity.
Now, in college, I understand that you proceeded to party John so badly, he just couldn't take it anymore. Is that true?
I love this background history that you guys found. This is amazing. This is true. This is absolutely true. I was coming back for another degree. I was 25. Sarah and most of the students in the class were, 18, 19, 20. But I definitely wanted to be very, very focused on my academics and crush it. And as we started dating, she proceeded to encourage me to go out with her every single night, not even one night off. Oh. And while her grades stayed at a high level, A+ across the board, mine started going down. So,
and you needed to sleep too, I suspect.
Yes. Yeah. Whenever you can.
She didn't offer to become a study partner then.
I was really testing him. I needed to see if he could really go the mile.
Yeah. Now, you all graduated in 96, and what happened after that?
I had applied to be an intern through a design competition with the firm that was then called EDA, which is now AECOM. And I had won the competition and I got placed in their Sydney, Australia office. So after graduation, we went down to Sydney where I worked for EDA and John worked for another architecture firm. And
Oculus.
we actually were, Oculus. We were actually on competing consortium teams for the 2000 Olympic Village design project.
Where was that village going to be?
It was right outside of Sydney. Sydney was hosting the 2000 Summer Olympics. So it was designing the Olympic Village that houses all the Olympic athletes.
And the former property was a military arsenal base. So they had a lot of unusual landforms that were protecting all the explosives. So it was a pretty challenging thing to work on.
And the explosives were gone by that point, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's always a good thing to get your explosives out before the athletes come.
It's good due diligence.
So you were in Australia, and then what got you back to the U.S. for the practice you have now?
I think while we were down there, we were offered to stay as long as we wanted and really enjoyed Sydney. It's a world-class city and it's amazing people. But we realized how far we were from home and family. It wasn't just a quick, easy flight to get back to see people. And so through my internship, my senior year, I was working for the Stapleton Redevelopment Foundation, which was redeveloping the old airport in Denver, another large master planning project. And I had a connection with a firm in New York City called Cooper Robertson and Partners. And so I reached out to them. We made our way to New York. I ended up working with Cooper Robertson for 3.5, 4 years. That was an amazing experience working on more large-scale master planning projects. And Sarah did as well. So Sarah, you could take it from there.
Yeah. So, John got hired by Cooper Robertson, which is an amazing firm. I also came to New York at the same time after leaving Sydney with John. And I really, at that point, felt like I wanted to be practicing landscape architecture. The College of Architecture focuses in environmental design at CU Boulder. And it's a really great, well-rounded education where we get exposure to a lot of planning, landscape, architecture, fundamentals of design. And so I started working, again, taking my love for landscape architecture firm in New York right after we arrived, but soon realized that I wanted to be practicing architecture and doing landscape, and that was an easier jump for me to make to be able to practice both. So I soon after got a job with Clement and Halsman Architecture, which was another really esteemed, established New York firm where I also worked for 3.5 years and really built the foundation of my architectural career.
When did you decide to write this new book, Designing Aspen?
Well, we started our firm, as you mentioned, in 2003. So we had our 20th anniversary 2 years ago. We really felt like we wanted to reflect and look back on what we've accomplished with our time in Aspen, with our firm. And so that was really the genesis of us starting to think about writing a book. And it was an amazing process. I'm sure you've spoken with other people who have written books. It's really something that forces you to gather kind of your whole thought process around why and what you've been doing. We hired an amazing book agent, Jill Cohen, who really helped us put together a great team of photographers and writers and graphic designers. And that has resulted in our book. And we're super excited about it. It came out, Princeton Architectural Press published the book, and they were an amazing partner. It came out in December of 2024 and has been a bestseller on Amazon. And it's just something that we're really excited about. We're already thinking about the next book. It's kind of addicting.
What makes Aspen so special?
Oh gosh, it's a number of different things. But one of our earlier projects was a home down in Woody Creek, and we worked with a feng shui artist expert. And they came in and did an analysis, not only of the property, but of the region. And they found these two polar geological features of which Aspen was in the crosshairs of. And that person was saying this is definitely something that makes Aspen very, very, a very special place. And you feel a certain energy. And I think that's been that way, since our ancestors were settling in the area, and not to mention the Ute Indians. It's a very bountiful, beautiful place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Aspen, when we chose to leave New York, we wanted to get back to Colorado and we really wanted to live in the mountains. And so we researched, and Aspen has so much to offer beyond the natural beauty of which it's unparalleled. It's magnificent. The culture in Aspen is really, really amazing. We talk about it in our book. You can see it. Everyone embodies, they call it the Aspen idea, is a balance of the mind, body, and spirit. And it really is true. And what Aspen has is this amazing natural setting, but it has just a real draw for cultural institutions that come, and people can really come to Aspen and participate in symposiums and conferences, in salon style conversations. And it really is casual, and people kind of shed their city armor, and you can really get to know people in a different way. And that's something that is very unique. And it's all year round. So it's not just 1 week out of the year. It really is all 4 seasons, and it's happening constantly. So it's a really amazing place. Please come visit.
Well, I know of Aspen. I've been a couple of times. But you don't see Aspen and budget conscious in the same sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the deals in Aspen? Is there a part of town now where you can get a little fixer-upper for, say, $3 million? I mean, what's going on there that people that want to come to Aspen but maybe aren't particularly wealthy can experience it too?
Yeah, Aspen is, it's at the end of a canyon, right? So, half the year it is shut off. So that really drives supply and demand and costs. So you're absolutely right to say that the price of entry can be very high. And certainly in the 25 years that we've lived in Aspen, we've seen a huge jump. You can still find some deals out there. You have to be looking, and there's a lot of things that still need to be fixed up. There's a lot of things that were built in the 60s and 70s that need some love, that really, need to become more energy efficient. And we always say, we do a lot of remodel in our practice. We have since the beginning. And we always say it's almost the greenest project you can do, is you can take something that already has embodied energy in it, and you can really make it current. You can make it for tomorrow, and you can really bring the energy efficiency up in it. So there's a lot of opportunities like that. And there just might be a few zeros attached to it.
Yeah, just a few. Yeah. Now, on every architect's website, they always say that they are a practice that pays attention to the site, right? It's like every architect invented this paying attention to the site concept. Now, you're working in Aspen, where almost every site is fantastic. So what's your secret sauce for doing these houses and making these great homes for people? Because it's not just the site. The site's kind of a given. So what else do you do?
I think during the early part of getting to know a client, there's, endless listening and questions, and just really uncovering what they believe is special about it. Because we can go out on the site and only observe what we see. And we try to go to the sites in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and try to feel it. But a lot of times these clients have been on the site. Maybe there's another house on there. We're doing a remodel addition, or maybe we're tearing it down. However, they have seen how this site performs throughout all the seasons. So there's a lot of intuitive listening that we have to do, not only to the site, but to the people that have really embraced it emotionally.
Yeah, I think no site's a given. I know you're kind of saying that tongue in cheek. Every site has particularities, and they're challenging. The easy sites are not left, right? So the sites that we have these days are they're encumbered. There's a lot of things to unpack on these properties to figure out what we can do. I would say a hallmark of the way we think and the way we design is we almost call it Swiss cheese. We have a permeability to how we design. And I think that our clients have commented over the years just how amazing our homes really relate to the land, and they can live really as one with the landscape and with the views and with this permeability of indoor and outdoor. So it's not just, how we site it and how we orient, but then it's how do we actually weave lives back into the site.
Now, back in the day, there were a lot of requests by architects to have media rooms. That was a big trend for a long time. they've kind of fallen out of favor now. So what are the hot new things that people are wanting in their houses?
Yeah, we're still doing them. They're probably not the movie theater that you would think of, buying a ticket and going and watching a feature film, that kind of movie theater. They're a little more casual, a little more living room, den inspired. So they can have a multi-function. So that, if you're not watching a movie, it could be double as a kid's room, a playroom, a place to go stretch, do yoga. So they're not just the terraced movie theaters that we're accustomed to seeing.
And wellness, we're doing wellness. Wellness is such a huge component to everyone's lives. And, there's so much out there and people are really interested in how to balance and how to have longevity. So I would say a component that is being integrated into all of our projects is, saunas, cold plunges, steams, outdoor spas, sound therapy, sound baths,
golf simulators.
Oh, yeah.
It's a hot button.
Stretching, like John was saying, obviously massage has been around a long time, but that body work, gyms are really important. I think people are really wanting to integrate into their homes as easy as they can to create balance.
I think that media rooms flourished back when media equipment itself was huge, cumbersome, bulky. And now that we have those fabulous thin screen TVs, you can put a TV in just about any room. And so you don't really need to dedicate a room to that purpose. But for instance, a golf simulator, that takes up some physical space. You need a dedicated room or for any of these other things you're talking about. So you have more flexibility with that.
Absolutely. We were just in Milan for the Salone de Mobile. We go every year, and it was amazing. Some of the technology these Italian furniture companies are making with just the shortness of projection onto a screen that you couldn't have done a couple years ago. It's really the technology is advancing fast to allow that flexibility.
I was visiting a friend up in Maine about a month and a half ago, and when it was time to watch TV, he pushes a button and this credenza that just had some stuff on top of it. Suddenly a screen rises up out of it.
That's awesome.
It was so cool.
Yeah, totally.
Because nobody wants to look at a blank screen, right?
So it goes away when you're not looking at it.
Well, we often question, even televisions. It's really interesting when you work on homes, these conversations get very generational. How many TVs do you need? Do people even use TVs really anymore? Are people, streaming on their iPads? And so, it's fun to have these program conversations with clients and just really see where they are in their aspirations and in their way of living. And each one's unique. And, there's certain things that are givens, right? Like, if you design a home, you have a kitchen typically, and, you have certain program elements, but then when it gets really fun, it's that 20% that's really unique to the individual and the family that's going to be occupying it. And it's really fun to uncover that.
Thank you both for joining us. It's really been a pleasure. The new book is Designing Aspen, available in your favorite bookstore. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
We were chatting with Colorado architects John Rowland and Sarah Broughton. Born in East Orange, New Jersey, Taurey Butler's musical journey began at age 7 with classical piano. His passion deepened in high school after discovering jazz legend Oscar Peterson. Piano became Taurey's lifelong pursuit, even while he studied Japanese and electrical engineering at Dartmouth.
Go Big Green!
Today, he's a globe-trotting musician, fluent not only in Japanese, but also bebop and blues, performing in places like Singapore, Thailand, Hong Kong, and Dubai. Taurey released his debut album in 2011 on Just in Time Records, and his latest is called One of the Others. Here's George's conversation with Taurey Butler.
Taurey, tell me about a guy named Barry Centani.
Barry Centani was a very important person for me. He was pivotal in my decision to go into jazz. He was the musical director for me in high school, and he noticed that I was looking for something musically, but I didn't know what it was. And that's the guy who handed me a recording of Oscar Peterson and just said, you got to check this out. And I had no idea what would happen after that one recording. It was a solo recording of Oscar Peterson, and he pretty much set me on the way.
And where was this? Where were you in high school?
In New Jersey, at a prep school called Montclair Kimberly Academy.
Okay.
Yes.
And where did that lead you next?
Physically nowhere, because the plan was to go there and then to continue on to college. And this was just something that I really had a deep passion for. But, at that time, you're more focused on, going in the traditional route. So that was my plan at the time, to continue prep school and go to college. It was in college that I found that I really, really enjoyed playing jazz piano.
Now, somewhere along the line, you got a degree in electrical engineering?
Yes, this was at college. But when I was working on that, I found a couple of friends that we would sneak off and we would play together. We would go to the practice rooms and jam. And there was a teacher there my first year who gave lessons, jazz lessons. And I signed up for the first year and I didn't get him, but he reached out and his name is Fred Haas. And similar to Barry Santani, he saw that I had a passion. So he kind of made a little bit of adjustment for me and got me started with the formal training of jazz piano.
Did you ever think about playing around like with synthesizers, kind of fusing together your two interests?
I have. It's interesting because the school I went to, Dartmouth College, was also where the founder of the synclavier.
Okay.
I think it was the first digital sampling instrument. It was huge at that time. And they had the original version there, and it was by a professor named John Appleton. And so I've always been interested in it, but I didn't really get into it until after leaving college. It wouldn't be for jazz because I just never felt that the synthesizer mixed well with the kind of jazz I was into at that time, which was more Oscar Peterson. Which is funny because there are videos of Oscar Peterson playing a synclavier. The teacher who taught me, Fred Haas, he told me a story about how he went to Oscar Peterson's house to show him about the synthesizer. So it's just funny how styles of music, they can cross over, but I just never felt I thought the synthesizer would be better for other types of music, even in jazz, like, more fusion type things. But it's hard for me to hear, I just never saw it that way.
Sure. Let's hear one of the songs from your first album. This is called The Preacher. Who wrote this song?
I believe it's Horace Silver.
really like that. That is a feel-good song right there.
Yeah, that's the response that I get from people when I play it too. That just puts a smile on people's faces.
Tell me about the residency that you had for years in Montreal.
Well, I got the residency from being in, where was I? I was in Bangkok at the time. After I finished college, I went back to New Jersey and then started playing around. New Jersey eventually led me to doing some gigs in New York, and there I met a saxophonist named Brooks Giles. He got me connected with this bassist and singer out of Chicago, LD Young, and LD Young invited me to play with him. He was doing these gigs in Asia, and I went to Singapore first, and then he asked me to continue with him, and ended up in Bangkok. He had passed away when we were in Bangkok, and then the next show we had to do, there was somebody there from Montreal named Billy Georgette. After the first set we did, he told me, yeah, I'm from this little town called Montreal. I don't know if you heard of it. And I was like, yeah, of course. And then we ended up continuing that run for a little while. And then when I felt it was time to move on, I reached out to him and he said, yeah, you can come on through. So I came to Montreal and I did an audition and I got the continuous gig, which was great for me because it gave me an outlet and a venue to even develop my craft even further and be able to do jazz in one place like 3 times a week, which was rare.
Oh, yeah. Very rare.
Yeah.
And that closed because of the pandemic in 2020?
Yes. Well, the owner passed away, like I think in 2017, 18, somewhere around there. And I think it was just too difficult to maintain it because he had had the club for years. It went through a name change. It used to be called Biddle's Jazz and Ribs. There's a great bass player named Charlie Biddle, who's I think originally from Philadelphia, who had been here and kind of helped him establish it. And he passed away, and then they changed the name of the club because there was a dispute about the name, using the names. Yeah, so when I got there, I just continued it until the pandemic. And like I said, him not being there, I think it probably had an effect on not being able to sustain it through the pandemic. I mean, but it was hard to keep many businesses going during the pandemic period.
It's hard to keep a jazz club going even in good times.
Right, this is true. Yes.
Yeah. Here's a song from your latest album, What Is This Thing Called Love, written in 1929 by Cole Porter for the musical Wake Up and Dream. It ran for shows in London for quite a long time, got picked up in New York, and has been covered by Tommy Dorsey, Ella Fitzgerald, Vince Guaraldi of Peanuts fame, Les Paul, Artie Shaw, Frank Sinatra, Keely Smith, and Melody Gardot. Here's Taurey with What Is This Thing Called Love. Taurey, thanks so much for being with me. I hope I get to see you perform live somewhere soon.
Yeah, it'll be great. Great to see you in person. Thank you for inviting me to join you on this.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. Okay, Tom?
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 25,000 significant modernist houses, and access 5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song is performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by Bobby Morris. Got a guest to suggest for the show? Write her at bobby@usmodernist.org. That's BOBBIE. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guile. George and I'll be back next week with another edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.